Hi folks, this is Jim Aikin. I'm here to show you a little bit about step sequencing. And as you can see, I've got my modular synthesizer sort of set up here. There are patch cables all over everywhere, which is pretty normal with modular synthesis. And this device right down here is an 8-step step sequencer. It's called pressure points. There's actually 2 pressure points modules by Make Noise as the company, and over to the left of the pressure points is a narrow module called Brains, which actually is responsible for turning pressure points into a sequencer. Now, I'm going to show you this process one step at a time, and the first step will not be very inspiring. We're going to listen to about as uninspiring a tone as you could imagine here. We're going to use this tone for sequencing. Now, pressure points has little touch plates here, and if I touch one, it will change the pitch. What we're going to do is we're going to ask a clock signal from the Tip-Top Audio trigger riot over here, which produces a riot of triggers. We're going to attach that to Mr. Brains. And now the clock will cause it to step through one step at a time. Now, I can change the tuning of any of these steps using the row of pots along the top, because that row output is running over here to the input of an oscillator, which you probably can't see. That's the oscillator that we're listening to. So far, it's not very inspiring, and in fact, it's not even in tune. That's because these are analog pots, and you can tune them to any pitch, but for musical purposes, you might want it to be in tune. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the output of that row of pots, and we're going to attach it to the quantizer up here. It's a quantimeter from Topobrillo hardware. And presto, now we've got nice steps that are in tune. And while it's running, let's say I wanted to retune one of these. Okay, as long as I'm touching this pad, it will stay on that step, and I can turn the knob. And you see it will quantize to equal tempered steps. So let's let it run. Now this is still not a very interesting sound. So I think we need an envelope generator, or maybe 2 of them. So I'm going to reach over here, and if I've connected everything up properly, we should now have an envelope, but we can't hear it because the filter's open all the way. There we go. And while we're at it, let's have an envelope for the amplitude as well. Now, interactively, because this thing is hardware and is running, I could change various things. I could reach over here and change this envelope generator. But we'll put it back where it was. That's pretty good. Now, the next thing we might want to do is we might want something more interesting rhythmically than a simple plodding along pattern. So I'm going to get Mr. Trigger Riot to play some faster triggers in a randomized pattern. Sometimes the faster trigger will fire, and sometimes it won't, randomly. Yeah, that's not bad. That's a little bit more interesting. The other thing we can do, of course, is we can add a voltage to the up-down input of the Brains over here. Here's the up-down input. Now sometimes instead of always marching forward, it turns around and backs up. Now the other thing that the quantimeter module, which you can't quite see, it's off the, no, there it is. You can see it on the screen. This module will do quite a lot of stuff, but you'll observe that there are 3 patch cords hooked into it. You can't quite see them, they're off the top of the screen. And I've got 3 oscillators hooked up. The Quantometer functions as a shift register, which means that every time it gets a clock signal from Mr. Trigger Riot, it moves the 3, it has 3 stored voltages, and it kind of pops them up the stack so that the oscillators will play in a canon with one another. And we're going to listen to all 3 of them at once. Let's see if it works. Now, of course, you'll observe that they're not quite in tune with one another because this is an analog system, and as it warms up, the tuning changes. So let's say I want to get them all in tune with one another. I'm going to stop the machine by pressing this pad. And there you go. That's the one that was out of tune. And while it's running, I could do various things to it, like change the filter cutoff, add some filter resonance, I could change this, how about this? This envelope generator will stop tracking the triggers, I think. So it's triggering sometimes, but not always. No, it is always triggering. Change the shape of the envelope. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that you can do with a step sequencer. That was still a fairly primitive sound, but there's a lot that could be done with the various knobs and settings to make it more interesting. So there you go. And I'm going to click the stop button now. Stop!